right now on the Daily Debrief.
I promise on anything I did to burn her.
Did this teenage mother murder her baby, or was it stillborn? The defense hammers Star State witnesses.
You ignored a ton of facts that would indicate that this baby was stillborn.
Plus, the attorney for rapper A$AP Rocky is shot in Sweden. And actor Jesse Smollett tells the Chicago Police Department why he should not have to pay them for investigating his report of being attacked. The Daily Debrief recaps today in court. It's Friday, September 6th.
Welcome to the Debrief, everybody. Michael Bryant, Catherine Smith among our guests tonight. Testimony from a star witness fell flat today in the trial of an Ohio cheerleader accused of murdering her newborn baby 2 days after her high school prom. Prosecutors say Skylar Richardson learned she was pregnant at the doctor's office, made no follow-up appointments, and did nothing to prepare for the baby's arrival. They say she killed her child after giving birth alone at home and then joyfully announced that her belly was back to normal when her family accidentally learned of the pregnancy from the doctor. Richardson's defense, however, says the child was stillborn and that the defendant buried it without telling anyone because she was afraid of social backlash. Richardson faces a total of 5 charges ranging from aggravated murder to abuse of a corpse. The possible punishments for each of those charges, if Richardson is convicted, are on your screen. Prosecutors are going for aggravated murder under a subsection of Ohio law which allows for such a charge given the age of the purported victim. In a case like this, the state's forensic pathologist is supposed to be the star witness. She testified that the baby's bones showed signs of fractures, but she couldn't tell if they happened before or after the baby died.
There are 3 fractures on both the right and the left parietal bones. So these are the same bones that we saw in the last picture, except we have now flipped them over. So we're looking at the other side, the side that would be in contact with your brain, so the inside of the bones. This is the left and the right parietal bones. We have a puncture type fracture on the left. There's a fracture right here and a fracture here. On the right, we have 1, 2, and this one is a little difficult to see.
Now, doctor, you are aware that baby Richardson's body was in the ground for over 2 months, correct?
Yes.
Are you able to offer any opinion as to whether those fractures are pre or post mortem?
I don't know.
The medical examiner estimated the baby's age as between 38 and 40 weeks. She listed the baby's official cause of death as homicidal violence of undetermined etiology. She said she used the defendant's statements to police to help make that determination.
The statements during the police interview were statements about sounds that the baby had made, gurgling, crying, movement, all signs of life.
Was it relevant to you that she had indicated that she thought she might have killed her baby?
Yes.
That she might have killed her baby when she squeezed it too hard?
Yes.
That her baby was alive for about 5 minutes?
Yes.
That her baby was alive before she squeezed her?
I object to the direct.
I'll sustain the objection as to the form of the questions.
Okay, on cross-examination, the defense made it clear that it did not like this so-called expert cherry-picking of statements that the defendant made to police.
You cannot tell us to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that Skylar's statement to the police that Annabelle was a stillborn isn't true, correct?
Correct.
Now yet, Dr. Allen, in your report, you list homicide as the cause of death. We all heard that, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that that's not based solely on your physical examination of Annabelle, correct?
Correct.
You indicated it's based on the police interrogations, correct?
That is one piece, yes.
You'd agree with me, Dr. Allen, that you're not a trained police officer, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're not trained in interrogation techniques, are you?
No, I'm not.
And you're not trained in the Reed technique, are you?
No,
You're not trained to identify false confessions, are you?
no,
Would you agree, based on what I just told you confirmation bias is that you ignored a ton of facts that would indicate that this baby was stillborn?
I did not ignore facts.
No?
No,
You didn't get an OB consult. You didn't pay attention to the fact that Skylar was bleeding on April 3rd.
Okay, also on cross-examination, the defense grilled the state's expert over why she didn't look further into the defendant's claim that the baby was born without its umbilical cord attached.
Did you pay any attention to the fact that Skylar said that she did not cut the umbilical cord?
yes,
You did. What did you paid attention to that? When a baby comes out and its umbilical cord is not attached, what does that mean, doctor?
not attached.
Not attached. You don't have to cut it. What does that mean to you?
An umbilical cord not being attached would mean at some point it broke.
Would the baby die as a result of not getting oxygen and nutrients from that umbilical cord?
A baby can die in those circumstances.
The defense raised serious questions about a chain of emails back and forth between the pathologist and the prosecutor about whether the baby's remains had been burned. The expert said in those emails, the prosecutor's office seems upset with me that I wasn't more definitive about the burning, and apparently my report has definitely upset their apple cart. In another chain of emails, the expert admitted that she would have done another test, in her words, if I'd realized that it was crucial to their game plan, I would have done it. But elsewhere, she said that if she conducted a second exam and didn't see burning, that's what I have to say. The prosecutor responded to this chain of emails. If it is now your opinion that you do not believe that there is any evidence to suggest that the bones were burned, I will need you to do an addendum to your report with this additional information so that it can be provided to the defense. The prosecutor's email later reads, as prosecutors, our job is to go wherever the facts lead, then says, please be aware that we are required to provide these emails as well as future emails to defense counsel. The defense took that information and ran with it and even forced the forensic pathologist to watch the recordings she did not use when forming her analysis.
I'm going to show you several clips from that interrogation tape. I believe it was July 20th. Okay, this was after a call from your office to Lieutenant Vane, giving him information that Dr. Murray had thought that the baby's remains were burned.
Did you burn her? I promise on anything I didn't burn her.
Are you sure?
I swear on anything.
Sure,
That I'm sure of. I'm sure
You
of.
didn't did you burn anything around her? Did you try to maybe melt the dirt or anything?
No.
Was there any reason for any of that?
No.
Stand or anything?
No, and I did nothing with fire. Nothing.
Is it possible originally you put her in the fire pit before you?
No.
I don't mean with a lit fire, but I mean put her in the fire pit.
No.
What about some other heat source? Was there any heat involved in anything? This was after she was dead, so it's not like...
No. The towel was black.
No, I mean, we know there was some sort of fire. I know it's...
And I understand that.
Did you ignore those statements, Dr. Brown?
I did not.
Did you see her surprised, or didn't she act surprised when they asked her, tell us about the fire? Didn't you think that she was surprised by that? Yes or no?
I don't know.
An anthropologist later testified that she thought the child was full term, about 37 to 40 weeks old. She said she saw no signs that the baby died from homicide.
I didn't find any trauma that could have contributed to the death of the individual. I did see some alteration to the bone, but all of it was considered post-mortem, which means it would have occurred after the death of the individual.
The fractures that may have occurred to the skull bones, you're indicating that would have been post-mortem, meaning after death. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
You
correct.
can't say that any of those occurred prior to the baby's death?
No.
Okay. Doctor, would you expect to see any evidence of trauma to the bones if a child was suffocated?
No, you couldn't see evidence of suffocation in the bones.
And would you expect to see any evidence of trauma to the bones if a child was drowned in water?
No, you wouldn't see evidence of drowning in the skeleton.
None of the fractures is evidence of any homicidal actions, correct?
All of the fractures and punctures and the abrasions, all the alterations that were noted on the remains happened after the death of the individual.
Okay, let's discuss this, which I think is amounting to a mess. Attorney Michael Troiano is with us from Las Vegas. Michael Bryant, Catherine Smith here in New York with me. So Catherine, look, if the state's own experts can't agree on whether this baby died from homicide or something else, then isn't that reasonable doubt before the defense even theoretically utters a word of its own case?
I think so. I mean, listen, you can show that there's homicide, but everyone's going to want to know, well, why? How did this baby die? And if you can't figure out how the baby died, how can you possibly know beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did it?
Michael Bryant, do you see a big discrepancy here? I mean, these are state witnesses, and one is saying, oh, it's homicide, and I base part of it on part of the interview, but not the other parts. And then the other witness doesn't seem to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, this is called being caught with your hand in the cookie jar here, because this witness was handcuffed by the prior medical testimony, or at least opinion. Here's why when you have experts you're dealing with, you don't put this stuff in writing. You don't put things in writing that say, oh, I upset the apple cart. Or if I didn't know what their game plan was, I would have done. You don't write that stuff down. It happens. But it's in a phone call. It's in something that isn't transcribed and then properly done by the prosecution, given to the defense.
Okay, and then when experts don't issue enough written reports, we see the defense trash that as well, so that's a double-edged sword. Michael Troiano, let me ask you this one. What do you make of this? I mean, does the state have a strong enough case here to go after these top charges, or are you just watching this fall apart?
At this point, I believe manslaughter is the likely outcome. I agree with the panel. There's not enough proof to definitively say whether or not this baby was born alive and then murdered by the defendant. And if they do come back with the conviction on the murder charge, I think it's solely going to be from the interrogation and the interactions between her and the detectives and her parents.
Michael Bryant, what do you make of those emails? We talked about them a little bit. We've got that mess. We also have the question of, okay, how did the skull get broken? Was that the result of some kind of homicidal violence, or was it because the defendant said, oh, I put a flower pot on top of the remains? And is that believable?
Well, you know, that's an option, and we've talked about before the possibility that when she handled the fetus in the bathroom, that maybe she slipped and dropped it, or maybe just holding it firmly with a soft, you know, the bones in a skull, very soft. It could have happened many ways. The real question is pre or post-mortem. That's the question.
Big question here. No clear answer. Catherine Smith, quickly here. What do you make of the tactic of the defense playing those parts of the interview and forcing the expert to say, why didn't you use this part to form your conclusion?
It's so good. I think that they're doing a really great job with that, because it forces the jury to look at it and say, well, why didn't they use it? This must be helpful for the defense, and it reiterates their position.
Because in other words, the expert is making a conclusion that maybe the expert isn't an expert enough to make.
Yes, and intentionally excluding facts that would go towards their pre-gone conclusion.
Still ahead here on The Debrief, another expert in the trial of Skylar Richardson has an opinion on whether the baby was born healthy and alive or not. Plus, actor Jussie Smollett's reason for saying he does not want to pay Chicago police $130,000 for their investigation into his claim that he was attacked. That case and more when we come back. One of the lawyers who represented American rap artist A$AP Rocky has himself been shot, reportedly by another lawyer. Henrik Olsen Lilja suffered head and chest injuries, but sources say he called police himself Police said it was an isolated incident and that several people have been arrested and questioned. A court in Sweden convicted ASAP Rocky of assault, but his only punishment was a 2-year suspended sentence. Attorneys for actor Jussie Smollett are asking a judge to dismiss the city of Chicago's lawsuit against him. The city wants Smollett to repay $130,000 police spent trying to investigate what Smollett claimed was a racist and homophobic attack on himself involving that noose you just saw. Police determined Smollett orchestrated the entire thing. Smollett's attorneys say Smollett should not have to pay the city because he had no idea how much time police would spend investigating the case. And now to a case we're covering right here next week on the Law and Crime Network. Sydney Moorer of South Carolina faces charges connected to the disappearance of a woman named Heather Elvis. Moorer was having an affair with Elvis, who has been missing since December 2013, almost 6 years ago. Moorer had been tried once before, but the jury was hung. Moorer's wife, Tammy, seen here, was convicted of kidnapping Heather Elvis in a separate trial last fall. And now back to the trial of Skylar Richardson in Ohio. The prosecution called a fetal medicine specialist who monitors high-risk pregnancies. He testified about his own conclusions based off of a report by the defense's expert.
A patient's weight with an eating disorder fluctuates up and down. Although Ms. Richardson weighed 149 pounds on 4/26/17 and was sometime in her third trimester, it is not known what her weight actually was shortly after conception nor any time during her pregnancy until that initial visit on 4/26/17. Therefore, one cannot determine how much weight gain Ms. Richardson experienced during the pregnancy, nor make any assertion regarding her caloric intake and or nutritional status during the course of her pregnancy. Although Ms. Richardson's hemoglobin hematocrit drawn on 4/26/17 was 12.1 grams per deciliter and 36.1% respectively, both within the normal range. If she were truly poorly nourished, she most likely would have been anemic, i.e. iron deficient, which she obviously was not. In summary, one cannot conclude, based on review of the aforementioned records, that Ms. Richardson's fetus was growth restricted and or stillborn.
By growth restricted, the expert means that the baby developed more slowly than a normal baby. The expert said it would not have been a factor in whether the baby was stillborn. On cross-examination, the defense poked holes in the state's theory about how far along Richardson was in her pregnancy.
When Skylar Richardson went to see Dr. Andrews on April 26, she was maybe, 38 weeks pregnant? 39 weeks or 40 weeks. The first week in August, which ended August 5th, Saturday, August 5th. So calculating from that date, which would be the latest possible date of conception, to April 26, do you agree that when Skylar went to see Dr. Andrew for the very first time and she learns that she's pregnant, she was 39 weeks pregnant? You agree with that?
Assuming he's a father.
Yeah, we are. I can allay your fears. He is the father. That has been established. So, 39 weeks on April 26. You have a fundal height. Dr. Andrews' fundal height is 32 weeks, correct? That's from the records.
Correct.
So she's 39 weeks. That's a 7-week lag, isn't it?
According to the measurement, yes.
Investigators tested for the presence of blood underneath the defendant's bed. They used a product called Blue Star, which illuminates possible traces of blood. Here is both direct and cross-examination about precisely what the police found.
This illumination was almost immediate. There was no prolonged, and it had a very intense illumination, which that means that there was a large concentration of blood in that area.
Did you draw any conclusions from looking at this picture, sir?
Well, we had been told that Miss Richardson had given birth to a child, and when I saw this, I immediately thought that this was probably the location where that child had been laid upon.
Why is that?
When I saw this, I could see the outline of a small torso.
You mentioned something that looked like a torso? In the bedroom?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah. You didn't mention that in your report.
I was asked what it looked like, sir.
I don't know if anybody told you, but Skylar bled for 3 days after she gave birth. You aware of that?
I was not, sir.
If you were made aware of that, would all this blood that you found be unusual?
Depending on where she bled, sir. May not.
All this blood could be from different times, correct? You can't date
I don't know where the blood came from.
You don't know where the blood came from. Fair enough.
Okay, let's jump back in for more analysis here. Michael Troiano in Las Vegas joining the rest of our panelists. So, Michael, what's going on with this blue star stain? Why did the police officer suddenly come to this epiphany that to him it looked like a torso when he did not say so before?
It's very confusing and I think misleading to the jury. It's almost a gift that they handed the defense because it really isn't based in fact. And to show up at the day of trial, almost, a year after the actual alleged incident occurred, and bring that up now, it just doesn't ring true.
Catherine Smith, is this an example of somebody getting up on the stand and saying, oh, I'm going to say something that's going to make this case look a lot better because it's getting weaker, so I'll say this, and then whoops, that was a bad idea?
Absolutely. I think this is exactly why the case is getting weaker, is because people are doubling down and overstating facts and making it seem worse than it is. If you just stick to the facts, it's so much stronger.
Michael Bryant, you were on the air during a lot of that testimony from the fetal medicine specialist. The core opinion there was that the baby was probably healthy, but then you saw another, what I thought was solid defense attack, saying, wait a minute, you've got lag times in the report you're relying on and the time of the birth here.
Yeah, we know that the conception took place in the middle of August. It was a narrow window of time. So you do the math pretty quickly, and if they felt the baby was 32 weeks old at the April meeting, then it could not have been anything but premature to some degree. And that's critical because we're talking about viability. And we're talking about viability because if the baby was stillborn, then there's not a crime.
Yeah, I mean, where does it end? I mean, does the state have this case beyond a reasonable doubt? Because, look, people can look out there in chat rooms and online and say, I really don't like the defendant. It doesn't really matter here. What matters is whether the state proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. In the textbook, you're correct. But in the real world and in trial and in a courtroom and a jury in a jury box, there's a lot of things that go into it that have nothing to do with the law.
You know, I'm counting on what happens in the court of the law, and that's what's in the textbook. Michael Bryant, the rest of the panel, thanks a lot. We'll be back starting on Monday with more testimony in this and other cases here on Law and Crime. Have a good weekend.